it's for real.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Let's Get Ready Network. I'm Adelia. That's my buddy Josh. This is Nostalgia Crackdown, our Schmoedown retrospective. And this week, we're talking about the decision. One of the biggest moments in the history of the team's division, Clarke Wolfe making her choice about whether or not to team up with JTE that actually saw the formation of 3 new teams in a span of about 20 minutes in the Schmoedown. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. This is an interesting topic because the decision actually happened before I became a Schmoedown fan. So I did not watch this live. So it was a lot of looking back and kind of learning a lot about the decision, stuff that I didn't even realize about it. So it's an exciting topic that I think we can talk a good amount about.
Yeah, I remember watching this live. It was a segment on the Schmoes Know show, and I remember being very excited for Clarke Wolfe when this whole thing was going down, and yeah, so let's talk about it.
Absolutely. So before we have to get into the decision, we have to talk about box office breakdown.
Mhm.
In season two is completely the ultimate Schmoedown of the teams division. And the final is completed in season 3, and that is the championship match. So there were 2 teams that made the finals of the ultimate Schmoedown, which is Box Office Breakdown and the Schmoes Know. Box Office Breakdown was composed of JTE and Finstock, while Schmoes was Mark Ellis and Christian Harloff. Very surprising to think about that Finstock made it to a tournament final, given that we only know him as his manager work. That was a fun detail that
Yeah.
came up while doing this. But in the match, the Schmoes Know win the belts and become the champions. First, going off before we get into the next layers that went into the decision, Adelia, do you remember the Schmoes Know versus the box office breakdown match and what you were feeling after the watching that live, or both teams' prospects? Obviously, the Schmoes Know became champions, but maybe
Yeah.
specifically box office breakdown.
I remember very much that was the first teams match I ever watched because I hadn't watched season 2 at that point. I started at the beginning of season 3. I remember thinking that the teams format was interesting and I wanted to see more of it, and we did end up seeing more of it, obviously. But at the time, I didn't know about the tournament prior, so I was just like, "Oh, we have 2 teams competing against each other. They're talking about a tournament. I need to find out what this is." Um, Finstock got 1 question right in that entire match. And I remember thinking he was obviously carried to that point by JTE. Now, I'm sure that if you go back and rewatch that tournament run in season 2, Finstock was more of a contributor than he was in the Schmoes match. But in the Schmoes match, I came out of it thinking, well, Christian and Mark definitely have the better future as a team than JTE and Finstock did.
And it's very interesting because usually, when we go through our Schmoedown history, if you're first, you go 3-0, and then you just lose in the championship match. Usually, you get a bunch more matches. But
Yeah.
as soon as that match finished, we have a storyline with JTE emailing Clarke Wolfe asking to become partners, basically. Um,
Yeah.
Basically saying that he carried Finstock and that Finstock only got 1 question right. So because of this, he needs Clarke Wolfe as his partner to be able to win those belts.
I believe
Which
JT's words were, "It's time for an upgrade."
Yes, it's very interesting because it usually thinking about it, you usually don't have a team's partner being that proactive when it comes to dismantling their team,
Yeah.
but the fact that you only get 1 question right in that championship match is definitely concerning, and better to be 2 steps early than 2 steps late, especially as it seems like Finstock was transitioning more to becoming a manager.
Mhm.
So all that makes sense. So there's a whole also thing about the storyline about JTE did this behind Finstock's back, and it gets revealed to Finstock, and so we have a bunch of layers going on about the decision. You have, will Clarke Wolfe say yes to JTE? How will Finstock react to JTE doing this behind his back? And if she says no, what will happen with JT and who will be the replacement partner? Those are all the three things kind of juggling as this is going on in the story.
Yeah. And at that point in time, when JT sent Clarke the email, she'd only played one match in the Schmoedown, but it was so impressive. He said that when you have talent, implying that he had talent, which JTE obviously did, you can also see talent, and he saw talent in Clarke Wolfe. Finstock was pretty blindsided by JTE sending the email, I think you could say, but he also said they were still going to be friends. You know, he didn't, I don't think, blame him fully for it because he knew he hadn't performed in that championship match.
It's very funny thinking about it because usually when you have this type of betrayal, and usually what you have is like, oh, now they're going to hate each other, or now they're going to and the storyline could have gone very differently with
It could have.
with Finstock casting out JT or something, or not allowing him in the Lions Den and becoming a whole rivalry between each other. But it's looking back on it, it's one of the most having Finstock not take it that hardly helps create the lines then and sitting ahead with the Patriots, and like works in so many ways, and such a great decision to not have that be a huge rivalry and a huge like, oh, because you backstabbed me or did this thing behind my back, I'm now going to hate you type of thing.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting choice that they made to go down this direction as opposed to the like bitter rivals to the end direction that they could have gone.
And of course, the next match Clarke Wolfe has is against Finstock, which is
Yeah.
another which is
I
another
believe
reason Finstock can take it harder, but he still doesn't.
Yeah, I believe this aired on the Schmoes Know show the day before the Clarke versus Finstock match aired on Collider. So, um,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's also a moment in the decision video, which we'll link to in the description of this episode if you've never seen it, where JTE tries to blame Christian for announcing this and revealing it to Finstock. But Christian was like, I assumed you would have told him you were doing this. And it made it very clear to JT he could not blame Christian for this because he had thrown the grenade in this relationship of them as box office breakdown himself.
Absolutely, and this added to like what was nice about this is this added to a possible rivalry between JT and Christian, because Christian just beat JT and Finstock
Yeah.
to win the belts. Then JT now has the ammunition of like, you betrayed, you showed this to Finstock, you're trying to sabotage me because I'm a threat. So like I think it's another like good seed to at least plant, even if you don't use it or if it doesn't blossom to anything. It was a really smart
Mhm.
like moment that like, oh, especially with fans watching for the first time, are like, oh, that can lead to something. Oh, I can't wait for the next Finstock versus JTE match, or I mean, sorry, Harloff versus JTE match, whether it's in teams or singles.
Yeah, absolutely. So Clarke comes out at this point and says she did get the email from JTE where JTE suggested that maybe that they should team up, and she knew how good of a competitor JTE was, and she thought that they would complement each other well. And then she goes, however, and you can tell JTE was waiting for it because as she's saying, however, he says, but he's waiting for the next step here because I just get the feeling he just knew at this point that she was not going to say yes to him.
Yeah,
And
if you're going to say yes, you probably lead with the yes,
yeah,
or you don't go with that complimentary. It's like, yeah, it's, you could definitely feel it coming.
yeah. So at the same time that JTE had reached out, Clarke says someone else reached out, and music starts playing, and it's that old school Superman score. And out comes Mark Riley, who at the time was the singles champion, that big belt on his shoulder. And Clarke, just basically confirms that, yeah, she's going to team up with Riley instead. And my favorite part about this was JT being like, I respect it. he's the one person who's proven he's better than me. So, I can't complain about it, basically.
Absolutely. And well, the one person that is you can make the argument the one person who isn't already a part of a team, since Christian and Ellis also beat JT in that moment.
I
But
mean, yeah, that's true, but like, how JT's mind works sometimes.
that is true.
So, Riley said that they'd been talking about the team's tournament, and Clarke knew her stuff and was really good at the game. He needed a partner, and so he thought this sounded good. He had no idea JT was going to reach out to Clarke, but he reached out to Clarke as well. So we got the formation of the first team of the night, which would eventually become known as Wolves of Steel.
Absolutely. And already off the bat, if this was just the formation of Wolves of Steel, even though Wolves of Steel never won the belt, one of the greatest one of the most memorable and important teams of all time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was it for Clarke on the decision. She was there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And then Riley and Clarke left, and we've got Ellis and Harloff sitting at the table with JT and Finstock, and they both basically asked them, so I guess box office breakdown's back together. JT says he needs to process it, and Finstock makes it very clear that he's made a plan of his own. Found another partner for himself. So he says he drunk emailed someone, and out comes Josh Macuga as only Josh Macuga can. Dancing, interesting outfit. He's got Finstock written on his leg. And they announced that the Mega Powers have formed. So here's our second team of the night, and JTE still without one.
So when this happened, I did not know the Mega Powers existed. I was like, I remember I was watching. I'm like, oh, this is completely new and surprising to me. I'm shocked. This is a team. They played 2 matches. We're probably not going to go too much into the Mega Powers, given how little impact they had. But they played 2
Yeah.
matches. They're 1-1. They beat the
The Wangers.
Wingers, yes. And they lost
And
against the
they
third
got
team,
knocked
which we'll get
they
to.
got knocked out. They got knocked out by the third team that forms that night, because but first we talk with the Mega Powers a little bit. Finstock and Macuga called it a long time coming. Finstock says he chose Macuga for 2 words: sex appeal, because that always helps you in a movie trivia contest. And so then they leave. So there's JT sitting at the table by himself. And he says, he has someone on the back burner. He had someone waiting in case Clarke said no. And music starts playing again. It's the Dropkick Murphys, I believe. And out comes Jeff Snyder in an old Drew Bledsoe jersey. And Christian starts yelling about how the Patriots have formed. Josh, what did you think when you watched that?
And it's because I didn't watch it live. It's funny. I can't have the reaction, but it's like it's like it's like going back to the draft and watching like Tom Brady being drafted in the 7th round, or Nikola Jokic being drafted to Denver in the 2nd round during a Taco
In
Bell
the middle of the
commercial.
Taco Bell commercial? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in the moment, I assume it's like, oh, this could be nice, or oh, this might be promising, or this might not lead to any. I'm not, obviously JT just made it to the tournament final, in the Schmoedown, so it's not equivalent of a 7th round, or not equivalent of the 2nd round of the NBA, but it's just like that level of dominance where it's like, looking back on it, you had no idea what was coming on. And now seeing it
Yeah.
happen live is like, oh, so this is where it started. This is where, or even you could argue the Star Wars prequels. This is where Palpatine was formed, or this is the moment Palpatine wins, basically.
Yeah. This is the moment the Patriots formed, and the team's division would never be the same again.
So let's talk about the immediate effect this had on the Schmoedown. And the immediate effect this had on the Schmoedown is the Patriots absolutely dominated the team's division. Wolves of
Yeah.
Steel was constantly the like number one contender ish type of team, but never like able to get to the promised land, if you will, of winning that belt. I
Mhm.
believe top 10 wins the belt from the Schmoes, and then the
They did.
Patriots win the belt from top 10, and then the
Yes.
Patriots defend an insane amount of times. And
Yeah.
also Mega Powers were there.
The
Mega
mega
Powers were
powers were there.
yes.
It was something to occupy Finstock and Makuga for a little bit of time. Thank you for participating. You brought joy to some people with your antics, but they never really were a force to be reckoned with as a team.
It's funny because they didn't even have a bad record. They were 1-1, but it was just clear that Finstock was just kind of like moving out of the playing space, and he excelled so much as a manager.
He was a fantastic manager. Like, you
Absolutely.
can't take that away from Dagnino. He was a great manager.
Yes. If you don't think he's the greatest manager of all time, he's probably number 2 easily. It's like it's
Yeah.
between him and Shannon Barney and Emma Fyfe, or
Mhm.
number 3. But like he's in that like Rushmore,
Yeah,
extremely caved in, no doubt about it.
no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. He's on the Mount Rushmore of Schmoedown managers for sure. Um, the Patriots taking over changes the whole way the team's division is, basically, because we don't really see a challenger for the Patriots until Above the Line forms with Sam Levine and Drew McWeeny,
And the
and
funny
that
thing,
actually
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go
What
ahead.
I was going to say is the funny thing is about the Patriots and how it felt like there's no challengers. They've really felt like a season 5 or 6 team that was introduced in season 3, which is like they were so
Yeah.
polished. They made so little mistakes. They never lost the game, and there were moments where they almost lost the game. But you could just see, like, for example, what the greatest, like the moments where the Patriots were about to lose was against, I believe, at the moment it was called Team Modoc with Matt Atchity and Gray
Yes.
Drake, and you just
Yes.
see like Matt Atchity and Gray Drake just fumble the speed round because they're doing accents and they can't get the answer out in time, even though they know the answer. Like that would never
Mhm.
happen. But the division was such in its infancy that you didn't have these super teams that constantly were being formed with Above the Line and Shazam, and even you can argue the less fortunate super teams with Deception and Ben Bateman and Dan Merle Danger Zone. You had like the teams division did feel wide open but the Patriots were just so polished, so accurate, and they truly no team. It took a while for the teams division to catch up to the Patriots. Like the Patriots started up here when the teams division was like around here, and it just took a while for the teams division to be able to catch up to the Patriots in that moment.
Absolutely. Um, the Patriots, I think, really set the standard that teams like Shazam and Odd Couple and Corruption and
Shire
Founding
Wolves.
Fathers and Shire Wolves and all those teams from like seasons 6, 7, 8 going on really took the bar the Patriots set and raised it. The Patriots were the first team to really get me interested in the teams division as a whole. Even though I wasn't a Patriots fan because I wanted them to lose,
Every single
what
time.
they were doing every single time. I did not like the Patriots, but them being such a dominant force made me invested in the other teams in the division that were trying to take them down, like a Team Action, like Top 10, like whoever it happened to be at the time. And so, yeah, the
And
Patriots
also
were
like
pretty
Wolves of
incredible.
Steel. Like
Wolves of Steel for sure.
like you can say the argument that like the decision created for the early teams division, the greatest team to root for with Wolves of Steel and the greatest team to root against with the Patriot.
Yeah,
Like truly like in Wolves of Steel, I believe played the Patriots once in a championship match and lost, I believe.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, but Wolves of Steel, we can talk about this also. Wolves of Steel was such a great team. They were part of so many memorable moments, and they were so close so many times, but they just couldn't get over the hump for whatever reason. It was very heartbreaking almost. And the one chance they had against the Patriots, they weren't able to finish it off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wolves of Steel, of course, stayed a team until Mark Riley retired from the league for a little while. Clarke didn't find a new teammate right away, ended up eventually finding Rachel Cushing and forming the Shire Wolves and getting that belt that she so rightly deserved to have. Same with Rachel. So I'm happy that Clarke ended up getting a belt in the end because that's the only belt I think Clarke ever won in the Schmoedown was the team's belt with Rachel.
Yes, she never won the singles belt, and it's funny thinking about it because I believe the last hurrah of Wolves of Steel was the tournament that Above the Line was introduced. So as soon as Wolves
I
of
believe
Steel
that's right. Yeah.
So as soon as Wolves of Steel made their exit, the Patriots had their like they didn't lose it right away, but it was the first moment of their demise as well, with
Yeah.
Above the Line just being a tough matchup for the Patriots, especially given the third match was an Iron Man.
Yeah. Wolves of Steel actually lost in the semifinals of that tournament in 2017 to Above the Line, who were playing their third match.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I think so looking back on the decision, I think like the greatest we had a whole episode of what ifs, but like looking back on this decision, you could definitely create a lot of amazing what ifs from the decision because even if you just by saying the Patriots don't form, that can create a lot of different champions. A lot, who knows? Maybe top 10 defends and becomes a much greater champion. Maybe you could say Wolves of Steel maybe doesn't exist. If they did exist and the Patriots didn't, Wolves of Steel could have maybe easily won a belt, and Clarke and Riley getting that team's belt. I believe Riley has never won the team's belt as well, so that would have been a huge.
Yeah. Riley never won the team's belt.
And there's a lot of teams that were kind of like teams that were really solid that were just kind of like struck down by the Patriots, if you will. Team Modoc was one of them. You can make the argument that a Knapsack and Rachel Cushing, their team could have definitely made a run.
Yeah. The
Um,
Nerds Watch, Team Trek, which was Mance and Jason Inman, were really good there for a minute.
yeah, and like when we're talking about the four main parts of this, four main players of the decision, I'm kind of taking on Makuka and Finstock. I'm sorry in this. I don't think the what if in that one is as interesting, but with the four, you're talking about JTE and Snyder, two of the greatest teams players of all time, and Riley and Clarke Wolfe, two of the greatest players of all time. And Clarke becoming one of the greatest team players of all time. Riley getting there, but funny enough, had another team of Who's the Boss that was so close in a lot of ways and just couldn't um, 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 get that final hurdle in. But we're talking about teams like Top 10, Team Trek, Team Action. But with those four players being free agents, basically, um, any one of those could have teamed up with anybody and basically become a champion just because of the caliber of player. I believe was Team Trek a team before the decision?
I don't remember if they
Because
were
like
or not.
because I wouldn't be surprised if one of those four teamed up with Scott Mance maybe instead of each other or Jason Inman. I think what was a huge possibility. I think there's a lot of different combinations that could have happened. Or Mark Riley had a teammate in the Ultimate Schmoedown. Maybe there's a chance Dan Murrell stays with Mark Riley and that team competes a bit in season 3. And
Yeah.
that would have been a huge shakeup to see Murrell and Riley so that would have been a real, the first real super team if you think about it. Two dominant singles players, especially with Dan. I believe season 3 is the moment where he starts winning and goes on the path to win the belt.
Yeah.
So
That could have been
yeah,
really interesting.
that would have been really interesting if they stayed together. If Clarke said yes to JT instead of Riley, maybe we get. I think Clarke and JTE could have easily won the belts, and who know? I mean, I
Mhm.
could totally see both of them going on a Patriots like run. I'm curious, and then also another unintended consequence that could be very interesting. Does Clarke join the Lions then? Does she
Yeah.
become a more heelish character? Um, in that sense, by teaming up with JTE,
Or do the Lions then form and they're not heels
that's
because of
also
Clark?
very interesting.
Yeah.
And when there was, I don't think Snyder and Riley would have became teammates just because I think Riley was so face, and I don't think Snyder would have been. Oh, sorry, I just dropped something. But I don't think
Yeah.
Schneider would have. It's tough to imagine Snyder as a face, really. He did a little bit of the Odd Couple, but even then, they were more like definitely like in the middle between face and heel, like
They
more
were more
anti-hero
tweeners.
than
Yeah.
pure hero. It would have been extremely interesting to see what and if if we had Christian on, I'd love to, like this is one of the questions I would ask Christian at this moment is like, hey Christian, if was there a different way this could have gone? Was
Yeah.
there a possibility? Like, what were the teams that were like the backup? Where it's like, oh, maybe actually instead of the Patriots, maybe JTE does Clarke Wolfe. Maybe JTE, if Mance is available, does Mance. I think there's a lot, or Matt Atchity and Gray Drake. We talked about both of them. That's always I'm just curious of what the possible teams that could have came out of this because you're talking about again Mark Riley, Clarke Wolfe, Jeff Snyder, JT, four of the greatest, in varying degrees, team players of all time and Schmoedown players of all time. Like honestly, all four of
Absolutely.
them probably um, comfortably, probably top 10, if not top 10, absolutely top 15.
I'd say top 10.
I
I'd
think
say they're
so
all
too.
top 10.
I think so too. It's got like Schmoedown, legacy talk, and when we're talking top 10 has become very competitive given at how many great players they are. But I mean, definitely Schneider, you think is in the top 10.
Snyder's in
Definitely
the top 10. Riley's the
Riley,
two-time champ. He's in the top
Clark.
10.
JT
Clarke.
might be the only question mark just because his only run was the Patriots. I don't think he wins a belt at any point after the Patriots. Snyder has the Odd Couple. Clark has Shire Wolves, and Riley has that historic early singles run.
And who's the boss, who even though they didn't win a belt, still won a lot
Yes,
of matches.
absolutely.
Yeah, JT sort of he dipped in and out of the Schmoedown after the Patriots disbanded. He was gone for the injury when he had the
He
moped
had a
incident
quick,
or whatever it
promising team with
was.
Lon Harris.
He had real promising team with Lon Harris. That team didn't end up staying together. He was in
Uh,
the only other team I can remember being in was that team with Roca. I don't remember the name of it. Rushmore, maybe?
Let me quickly check.
I
Yeah,
think it was
he
Rushmore.
was a yes, Rushmore. He was Evil Geniuses. Was yep. The movement was also a thing, which was who is the movement actually?
The
Oh,
movement
Paul
was that
Preston.
him and Paul Preston in season 9. Yeah, I
I
think they played
completely
one
forgot about
match.
that. And
Yeah,
also in singles, JT, which I think perfectly sums up his singles career, 12-12 record, which is extremely
mhm.
tough to do. To be that 12-12 and get that many matches, if you will. Because usually
Yeah,
when you're at 500%, you don't get that matches. But JT was so dominant in teams and also had a lot of good runs. The issue and had played a lot of good matches, but it had these runs where he would be like, oh, he's maybe up there for winning the singles belt, or oh, he's on a 4-game losing streak or something.
yeah, he was very up and down after the Patriots disbanded, but doesn't discount that he was one of the more dominant players and personalities in the Schmoedown for
Absolutely.
a very long time.
Absolutely.
Schmoedown to me is always a little more interesting when JTE was around and doing something than it was when he wasn't.
Like you can make the argument of the four, in my opinion, JT was my favorite character out of the four when it just came to like promo work, when it came to like storyline stuff and like beats that he like you to me he was just so extremely good at being interesting and entertaining and like either having us really want him to lose or like being kind of lovable in a way that's kind of interesting and rooting for him.
I'd agree with that, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else you want to discuss about this, Adelia?
No, I think that's pretty much everything there is to say about the decision. Like I said, it's really interesting to go back and rewatch it like I did earlier today. It's only about 20-24 minutes long, so it won't take that long to watch through. Like I said, we'll put a link to it in the description of this episode. But it's a 20-24 minutes. that changed the Schmoedown teams division forever.
Absolutely.
Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me here on LGR on the Nostalgia Crackdown once a month. We'll see if I'm on in the future with the fantasy football one. If I am, that's because I won. And then the next week, you can, if you are betting the results of our fantasy football league, you can bet me to lose, because every time I appear on this show, I'm going to lose. But that's okay. Supporting me is just supporting LGR. Like, comment, subscribe. We're so close to 1,000, I believe, and we let us know about the decision, some fun what if teams you think of if JT, Mark Riley, Clark, and Jeff Snyder didn't form Wolves of Steel and the Patriots. I'm curious to think what would be your dream season 3 partners for them, and let us know. Let us know. Just supporting LGR, supporting me.
You can support LGR by subscribing to the channel. Like Josh said, we're getting closer to 1,000. So please subscribe. And if you want to support us a little bit further, you can buy us a coffee over at ko-fi.com/LGR_network. $3 a month gets you into our Discord. There's some higher tiers as well if you want to offer up a little bit more support. They have some other perks. You can find me on this channel on the Rewatchers Council. That's Thursdays, 3 p.m. Pacific with Snark. It's our Buffy the Vampire Slayer rewatch series. Ferris appears on that too from time to time. And you can find me on the Highlights channel doing the Starting 11 with Snark. That's our English Premier League recap series. There's links to both those channels in the description. Like I said, please subscribe. We're getting closer to 200 on the Highlights channel, and 1,000 is the goal by the end of the year on this channel right here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, we are out of here.
It's for real.